Clippers finally proven their worth. They have tied the series with the Utah Jazz, and it is now 2-2. Have the Clips finally proven their worth? We'll talk about that right after the bumper. What's happening, everybody? Jeff Lightsy Jr. here with the Black Boss Channel and Victory Formation. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe, and the notification bell because we upload every single day. And it's right here at 9 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Eastern. We'll be live with the Victory Formation Sports Show. Now, the Los Angeles Clippers have tied the series against the Utah Jazz 2-2. And this is after two spectacular performances by Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. And now it's got me wondering, someone who has been on record, you can go look at the archives. I have called the Clippers the biggest frauds in the history of the NBA, but they could totally wipe out that accusation of me or whatever by continuing to do what they're doing, and that's win. And now the question poses, have they finally woken up? Have they finally figured it out? Have they finally been able to put it together and consistently win together? Because some reason, some way, somehow, they love falling down 0-2 in playoff series. We saw them do it against the Dallas Mavericks and Luka Doncic. We saw them do it in this series against the Utah Jazz and Donovan Mitchell, and they still haven't figured out Donovan Mitchell. But it looks like their game plan is let Donovan do his thing, whether it's Reggie Jackson guarding them or Luke Kennard or Marcus Morris, and then we'll sprinkle in some Kawhi and Paul George. But if our guys do their thing, if our guys go out and get buckets, if our guys do what we pay them to do and we There we go. Hopefully, we're all good. Wi-Fi was kind of messing up a little bit, but the Clippers were able to win last night, 118-104 over the Utah Jazz. Paul George had 31. He had 31 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists. Kawhi Leonard had 31.7 rebounds and 3 assists, and Kawhi had the poster of the game. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe. Kawhi had the poster of the game over Derek Favors. Side note, did you guys know Derek Favors was the number 2 overall pick in his draft? I don't know. Leave your thoughts in the chat. Did you guys know that Derek Favors was the number 2 overall pick in his draft? But anyway, moving forward, the Clippers, they've now won 2 games in a row. Donovan Mitchell, he's doing his thing. 37, 5-5. He played 40 minutes even after, hurting his ankle at the end of game 3. Game 4, he played 40 minutes. But it looks like the Clippers are satisfied with allowing Donovan, who's averaging over 30 points per game in this series, to do what he does, but we're going to limit everyone else. We're going to make Bogdanovic make shots. We're going to make Joe Ingles make shots. We're going to make Jordan Clarkson, 6th man of the year, beat us. We're going to make all of these other guys beat us because I do not believe, or they do not believe, they have no faith. They do not believe that the other guys on the Clippers can actually make enough shots to beat them. And they might be onto something because it's worked for them the last 2 games. It's allowed them to tie the series up. And it honestly has allowed everybody else to see the Clippers are really better than the Jazz when their guys play. Their guys have to play, though. When Paul George is playing like Pandemic P and not Paul George, then that's when all bets are off, right? Everything is thrown out the window. But when he plays like Paul George, and I had somebody, because I was tweeting last night. You can follow me on Twitter at JLightsy7. I was tweeting last night about the game, and I was like, man, Paul George is on one tonight. Like, Paul George has come to hoop. Paul George is not messing around. Paul George is doing what he's supposed to do. And one of my friends, Lake, shout out to Lake, tweeted me and said, man, Paul George is a good basketball player. Like, why are you acting surprised? Like, Paul George is not supposed to be doing this. And I had to remind him, yes, Paul George is a very, very good basketball player sometimes. He's not a very good basketball player all the times. For the majority of the time, and especially during the regular season, he's a great basketball player. Like he's an amazing basketball player during the regular season. But in the playoffs, since he's left Indiana, he has not always been a great basketball player. Leave your thoughts in the chat. Has Paul George, since he's left Indiana, really proven to you that he is a great basketball player? Some people want to put Paul George in like that superstar category, right? Like I'm not one to do that because he's let me down too many times. I think Paul George is a star. I think Paul George can go out, obviously, and get you 30, he can get you 40. Hell, he's even had 50-point games. But consistency is key. And stars and superstars are made when? During the playoffs, right? Paul George hasn't had great playoff series since he was in Indiana. Since he's left Indiana, he's had first-round exits and disappointments. Since he's left Indiana. Last year, they didn't get bounced in the first round, but they were a disappointing loss to the Denver Nuggets after going up 3-1. A lot of that was put on the fact that Paul George underperformed, that Paul George didn't do what he was supposed to do. In OKC, first-round exits. That's disappointing. That's not what you're supposed to be doing when you have Russell Westbrook, Mr. Triple-Double, and Paul George, a guy who finished second in defensive MVP, and I think he made an All-NBA team that year. So, yeah, like Boyd said, Paul George has let me down several times in the playoffs. And that's why I can't call him a superstar, because superstars are made in the playoffs. That's why we're so high on Luka. That's why we love LeBron so much. That's why Kevin Durant has earned the respect. That is why other guys like, Steph Curry, people love Steph Curry because he's got championships and he's performed in the playoffs. Maybe not to the level he's performed in the regular season, but he has performed in the playoffs. Klay Thompson comes to mind. He's a clutch playoff performer. And some guys like Russell Westbrook that really do really well during the regular season aren't as reliable in the playoffs, aren't as clutch, don't make as many plays, the stats or whatever, don't make the impact that they make in the playoffs. And that is why Kawhi Leonard, is why we love Kawhi Leonard so much. 2-time finals MVP, including taking Toronto, winning the first championship ever with the Raptors. But that is also why guys like Paul George, Russell Westbrook, or whoever, and let's just focus on the Clippers, why the Clippers have been so disappointing. Because we have history that tells us Kawhi Leonard is a great playoff performer. We have history that shows us Kawhi Leonard shows up and makes plays when they matter the most. We have history, and we know that Kawhi Leonard can get the job done. We've seen it multiple times. Toronto, even though everybody was hurt on his way to the finals, Toronto ran through the Eastern Conference and won the NBA title, beating the Warriors. Now, Klay and Kevin Durant were both hurt. We're not going to act like that didn't happen, but they made it happen. They still won the championship. They still had to go out there and play the games. So we've seen Kawhi Leonard perform. It's Paul George, the second fiddle on the Clippers, that really is the key to making this whole thing work. He's really the key to making this whole thing work, because you have to, in the modern day NBA, unless you just get lucky with teams and they rack up a ton of injuries, and you have like some mid-year stars like Milwaukee and a team like Brooklyn just gets hurt like hell, you have to have 2 stars, minimum. 2 stars. Brooklyn has 3. Philly has 2. The Clippers have 2. The Lakers, when healthy, have 2. Like you have to, the Suns have 2. You have to minimum have 2 NBA stars on your all-star type players to make any kind of noise in the NBA this year or moving forward, because all these guys team up. They team up, they make triplets, they make duos, they make whatever. Now you could get lucky, like, Atlanta kind of with Joel Embiid's injury, or, Milwaukee right now with James Harden and Kyrie Irving both getting hurt. You can get lucky and have 2 stars or a star and a really good supporting cast and potentially win multiple playoff series. But in most cases, when you only have 1 star, you end up like Luka, like Luka Doncic or Nikola Jokic. See what Nikola Jokic without Jamal Murray? You see Luka Doncic when we're figuring out the Kristaps Porzingis is a fraud? That's what happens. You don't make it out the first round. You don't win your playoff series. You don't do what you're supposed to do, or you don't live up to set expectations, not just for your team, but even that you set for yourself. And so how does that relate back to Kawhi Leonard of the Clippers? When Paul George plays like Paul George can play, like the star that he really is, at least during the regular season, and the star that he really can be during the playoffs, these are the results. These are the results. 118 to 104 win on the road, or at home actually, against the number one seed in the NBA. The Jazz had the number one record in the NBA. You can say what you want about the shortened COVID plague season. The Jazz had the number one record in the NBA. And really, this game ended up being a 14-point win. It was never that close. It felt like a 30-point win. Kawhi Leonard's dunking all over them. Paul George is getting whatever he wants, whether it's at the rim or at the perimeter, making shots. Donovan Mitchell doing his thing. 30, like I said, 37 points, another 35-plus point game. He's got 6 straight games, I want to say now, with over 30 points in these playoffs. But it didn't matter because Paul George, Kawhi Leonard were way too much for the Jazz this entire game. Now, the question is, can Paul George keep this up? We've seen this movie from the Clippers before. Let's rewind it back to the first round series. Just, I don't know, a week ago, 10 days ago, 14 days ago, in their series against the Dallas Mavericks. The Clippers fell down 0-2. They won the next 2. It was ironic because they fell down 0-2 playing the first 2 games at home. These first 2 games, at least they played in Utah and fell down 0-2, whatever. So then they went back and won the next 2, just like they did against the Jazz. But then they dropped game 5. Luka and the Mavericks won game 5. I think Luka put up 40 or something, 39 and 12 or something ridiculous. And they won game 5. Now, can the Clippers just finish off the Jazz? Because the Jazz look disheartened. The fact that Mike Conley isn't playing got them discombobulated. The fact that they haven't figured out Donovan Mitchell, but they figured out a formula to maximize their team and to limit the Jazz. And that formula is allow Donovan to do his thing. He's going to score 30 plus points. He's going to score 35, 37, 39, maybe even 40 points. But we have to stop the sidekicks. We have to stop Joe Ingles and Jordan Clarkson, 6th man of the year, and Bogdanovich and Rudy Gobert, limit him and do these things. Royce O'Neal and Derek Favors. We keep those guys under wraps. We're going to win this series. It looks like the Clippers have figured this out. It looks like they have. And it looks like their star power, because the NBA is all about stars, their star power can overmatch the Jazz star power. The Jazz star power is just Donovan. The Jazz, it is what it is. Leave your thoughts in the chat. The Jazz star power is just Donovan Mitchell. The Clippers have 2 guys. When they're on, they're really on. Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. Say what you want about Paul George. Call him playoff P, pandemic P, whatever. When he's on at 6'8", 6'9", silky smooth, nice handle, nice 3-point shot, can finish at the rim, making all his free throws. And then the same thing with Kawhi Leonard, 6'8", mid-range king, can hit clutch shots, doesn't miss a free throw. Clippers are tough to beat. When those 2 guys are on, and the only people that can stop them are them. Let's be real. The only people that can stop Kawhi Leonard and Paul George are who? Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. When they have off nights, it's not really anything because of the defense does. It's because they don't show up. And they're not reliable consistently. So game 5 is going to be critical, because if the Jazz can win game 5, there's a possibility that Mike Conley can be back by game 6. Possibility, very slim, very, very slim. But if you allow Mike Conley to come back in a closeout game, even if he's not 100%, even with him not being 100%, that's not good. It's not what you want to see if you're a Clippers fan. Because Mike Conley, although he might not be able to give his team the most physically, he's going to give them a ton emotionally. A ton emotionally. for a team looking to close out a playoff series, that's going to mean the world to the Utah Jazz, their fan base, and the players on the team. So the Clippers are going to have to make do. Game 5 is going to be very, very critical. We're going to win Game 5. And those are my thoughts on that. Leave your thoughts and comments in the chat below. Leave your thoughts and comments in the chat below. And be sure to hit the thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe. Now, the other game that was played last night was the Hawks versus the 76ers. And the Atlanta Hawks have tied the series up against Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, and the 76ers, thanks to a hell of a performance by Mr. Trae Young. 25 points, 18 assists. Bogdan Bogdanovic, he has a similar name to the guy from the Jazz. You know, this is the one for the Hawks, had 22 points. And the Hawks were able to pull out a 103-100 win over the Philadelphia 76ers. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe. Now the Hawks in this one were down, I think, 18 points at one point. We're down 13 points at halftime. Outscored the 76ers by 11 in the third quarter, thanks to like 9 nasty points by John Collins. John Collins, he only had like 9 points in that quarter, but they were huge. He finished with 14 and 12, but he had like 9 of them in the third quarter, and they were huge, like two or three big dunks, like huge momentum shifting dunks. And then in the last quarter, the Hawks won that 23-18 to pull out the 103-100 win over the 76ers. Now, here's what was interesting about this. There were a couple of interesting things. Joel Embiid finished with 17 and 21 rebounds, which on paper doesn't sound bad, right? Like, it doesn't sound bad at all. But the fact is, he missed every single shot he took in the second half. He went like 0 for 12 in the second half, including in the final minute with like 30 seconds left to go. 76ers down 1. Embiid gets a perfect pick and roll, a shot at the basket, and blows it. He missed the layup. At 7'1", 7'2", Joel Embiid missed a layup to take the lead. That's not a good sign. Going 0 for 12. First, he went to the locker room in the first half. For those who watched the game, Joel Embiid went to the locker room in the first half. Came out for the second half and missed every single shot he took, including a go-ahead bucket at the rim. Now, leave your thoughts in the chat. Do you think Joel Embiid is hurt? We got to remember, there was reports that he slightly tore his meniscus. He has a slight cartilage tear in his knee. And although he had 21 rebounds and 17 points, he looked hurt in the second half. He did not look like Joel Embiid. In game 3? In game 3, he just simply physically bullied Clint Capella. He physically bullied Clint Capella. There was nothing Clint Capella could do against Joel Embiid. I'm sorry if you're a Hawks fan. Clint Capella on his best day can't handle Joel Embiid. I'm sorry. But this game he did. He held him to over 12 in the second half. Why? Because I think Joel Embiid is still hurt. I think he is still injured. And it showed. Missing that game go-ahead layup with under 30 seconds left in the game, that lets me know he's still hurt. Another key thing. So Joel Embiid still being hurt is a really, really big thing. Another really, really big thing. Remember I was telling you guys about that second star? And I said Philly's 2 stars are Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons is not playable in the late games. Ben Simmons finished with 11 points, 12 rebounds, 9 assists. So he almost had one of those puny triple-doubles that people get so hyped about, like a super puny triple-double. But Ben Simmons is unplayable at the end of games. He is so bad at free throw shooting that you can't even allow him on the court when the game matters the most. Because if they foul him and they send him to the line, chances are your best case scenario, he's go up there and makes 1 or 2. Your worst case scenario and very likely scenario, he goes up there and blows both of them. How can you be a star in the NBA if you're Ben Simmons? You're not a proficient scorer. You're a nice distributor, a really good defender, but you can't even be put in at the end of games. You're not even reliable enough as a guard. Let's be honest. Ben Simmons plays guard for his team. He guards Trae Young. He's the primary ball handler. He's the primary distributor. As a guard, I can't even play you in clutch situations. That is a problem. That will continue to be a problem for Ben Simmons. You are a guard. You are the primary ball handler for the Philadelphia 76ers. You are their point guard. And your big guy, Joel Embiid, is struggling. 0 for 12 in the second half. Now, Tobias Harris finished with 20 and 5. But you're Ben Simmons. You're supposed to be the second best player on the team. You're the second franchise player. You're on a $150 million contract. Joel Embiid is struggling. He can't find a shot. He's not making anything. He's hurt. He's whatever. It's your time to step up for this team. This is what's taking place. You have to step up in those moments. When Trae Young is over there, now Trae Young shot the ball horribly. I want to say he was like 8 for 26 from the game. Trae Young really shot poorly from the game. But Trae Young made impact elsewhere. He's not a great defender, so he's not going to make a crazy big impact on the game defensively, but he put pressure in those pick and rolls, and that's what led to those 18 assists. When his team needed him the most, Trae Young made plays. When his team needed him the most, Ben Simmons wasn't even on the damn court. He couldn't even be played. Like, he wasn't even out there. Ben Simmons needs to play power forward. Yes, he's 6'11", but at power forward, he shrinks the floor. There's no room for Embiid to operate on the block if you put Ben Simmons on the block, because Ben Simmons can't shoot. And not only can he not shoot, he doesn't even attempt to shoot. That's the sad thing. He doesn't even attempt to shoot. Folks, this is analysis, not just personal slander of a possible team. No, and we're not doing that. I'm not talking about anything about Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, or Trae Young, or Kawhi Leonard, or Paul George, about the personal lives. We're just talking about the basketball game. I really like Ben Simmons. And I think Ben Simmons has stayed very, very stagnant over the course of his NBA career. He's really good at certain things, right? He's a really good defender. He's a really good ball handler. So it's like he only works on those things. He doesn't get better at the things he's not good at, which is free throw shooting, hell, just shooting in general, and making plays in clutch moments. It doesn't seem like that registers. That doesn't click. That doesn't happen. And so that's what I'm challenging Ben Simmons to do. Because Trae Young, like I said, Ben Simmons did his job defensively. Between him and Matisse Thybulle, they did their job defensively on Trae Young. They held him to 8 of 26, like 3 of 11 from 3. That means you did a good job on defense. But I need, when your number one go-to bucket getter, Joel Embiid, is struggling in the second half, which he was, over 12 in the second half, I need for somebody, preferably Ben Simmons, on the Sixers, like, all right, hey, Embiid, hey, Joel, I got this. I'm going to take us home. Because clearly you're being bothered by an injury. Clearly you're not yourself. I mean, you're missing layups, dude. So that's okay. I can handle this. I can make this happen moving forward. I can put the team on my back. I can, you know what I'm saying, take ownership, responsibility, and make sure we get to the finish line, because the Sixers had this game. The Sixers were up 18 at one point, 13 at halftime. John Collins got the best of them in that third quarter, and Trae Young and his playmaking ability, him distributing the ball, getting everybody good looks. Bogdan makes some big shots, and Kevin Huerter came out and made some huge shots. So that's what happened. That is what took place, and that is why the Atlanta Hawks were able to complete that comeback. Now, Tony says Suns versus Milwaukee in the finals. You know, it's so funny, Tony. This morning, I had one of my buddies, shout out to Dominique Lester. I want to say he texted me the same thing. He said the Suns over the Clips in 7. And did he say the Suns in Milwaukee in the finals? He said Clips over Phoenix in 7. So he believes the Clippers will beat the Phoenix Suns in the next round. Well, I told him the Clippers got to finish this round. The Clippers still got the Utah Jazz. The Clippers still have to prove to us, to me, to you, to the fans, to everybody watching, that they can be consistent enough to finish off this series. Because, like, in your mind, don't you? I mean, let me know in the chat. Let me know your thoughts in the chat and hit the thumbs up button. In your mind, don't you think this is going 7? Like, the Clippers just can't do anything easily. The Clippers have to make things the most difficult. They have to go the road most traveled, not less traveled, the road most traveled. They have to make everything tougher than what it should be. They come out and have 2 spectacular performances, particularly by Paul George in the last 2 games, and it looks like they have taken control of this series, winning the last 2. But isn't it just like the Clippers to go and blow Game 5? Like don't we think the Clippers are just gonna blow Game 5 against the Jazz and then win Game 6 and come down to a do or die Game 7? That's how I feel. I don't know how you guys feel. Leave your thoughts in the chat. Do you believe the Clippers will finish off the Jazz in 6 games? That means win 4 consecutive games. Do you think the Clippers have it in them to win 4 straight games against the Utah Jazz? I don't. I just don't. I'm going to just be honest. I do not see the Clippers winning 4 straight games against the Utah Jazz. So what does that mean? It means we're going to go 7. It says Seth Green, Harris, Simmons, Embiid, Hawks winning, Hawks, Golden State Warriors of the East. I don't know about that. White Falcon 44. The Hawks are the Golden State Warriors of the East. I wouldn't go that far, but I will say this, though. My favorite team is the Los Angeles Lakers. My favorite team is the Lakers. But a team that I really enjoy watching is the Atlanta Hawks. Obviously, they're not the Brooklyn Nets. They're not like, for a while, I mean, they're not even the Phoenix Suns or even the Utah Jazz. Like, they didn't have the record that the Phoenix Suns had or the Utah Jazz had or the Brooklyn or the 76ers or whoever, Clippers or whatever. But they are a fun, young, exciting team. Led by Trae Young. You got John Collins, who's a young high flyer, can make athletic plays, who can stretch the defense out to the 3 a little bit. Clint Capella is your athletic, dunking rim protector. Kevin Huerter is a little 3-point specialist. Bogdan Bogdanovic is another bucket getter. Not necessarily a 3-point specialist, but can hit the 3, can make shots, can get a basket from anywhere on the court. Danilo Gallinari makes a 3-point guy, can post up and hit some mid-range shots. DeAndre Hunter can make plays. Is DeAndre Hunter hurt? He didn't play much yesterday. But anyway, DeAndre Hunter is a nice player and a guy who I always had like higher expectations for in the league. I thought he'd be a better NBA player than he was in college. Was Cam Reddish. He has been kind of disappointing, and he's hurt in this series. But I still think Cam Reddish can have a successful NBA career, and he's also on that team. So I am like looking forward to seeing them move on. I wouldn't call them Golden State of the East now. Let's not go crazy because the Warriors, we're talking about the Warriors with Clay, Draymond, and Steph. They ain't that. They damn sure ain't that yet. But I will say I look forward to watching the Hawks every time that they're on TV. I've really enjoyed them throughout these playoffs. Trae Young playing the villain in the New York Knicks series. Trae Young and the Hawks taking it, giving the Sixers everything that they can handle. I'm really looking forward to continuing to see them. It says, haven't been keeping up, been busy. Where's Kawhi? 7 games, Clippers pride at stake. Yeah, so here's the thing. So, like, going back to the Clippers. The Clippers won last night, 108 to 114 to 1. Like, they won by 14 points. For some reason, I can't get the score right. 118 to 104. That's what the Clippers won. They won. Paul George put up 31 points. Kawhi Leonard put up 31 points, and they looked really, really good as a team, as a unit. And my thing is, I think they've finally woken up. I think. But the Clippers are a team that love to make things difficult. They don't take the easy route for anything. They always have to extend series and make series tougher than they probably should be. They fall down 0-2, whether they're starting the series at home or starting the series on the road. They seem to always fall down 0-2. But now it looks like they've taken control of this series against the Jazz. They figured out, okay, Donovan is going to get his. We can't worry about exerting Paul George and Kawhi Leonard on Donovan the entire game. What we have to do is not only match Donovan, but double Donovan. And what I mean by double him, not just double team him literally during the game, but also whatever point production he's able to put out on however many shots, our guys have to double that. So between Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, we have to double that. We have to make that null and void because one of our stars are going to match him and our other star is going to be on top of him. So if he has 30, Paul George has to have 30 and Kawhi Leonard has to have 30. That way we double him and we make him null and void. And the other guys are going to have to beat us. Jordan Clarkson's going to have to go out for 30. Joe Ingles going to have to go out for 30. Bogdanovich is going to have to go out for 30. And the chances of that happening are slim to none. So, yeah, Donovan, go out there and get 37. But if I'm Kawhi Leonard, I'm Paul George, I'm Ty Lue, I know that our other guys, Reggie Jackson, who's been playing amazing during these playoffs, by the way, Reggie Jackson, Luke Kennard, Marcus Morris, Batum, Zubac, these guys, our supporting cast, if our stars play like they're supposed to and our supporting cast can do what they need to do, the Jazz have no shot. That's how the Clippers feel. And over the last two games, it's been proven to be right because the last two games have been blowouts. They haven't even been close. They won this game by 14, but it wasn't even that close. So I'm tuned in. I'm tapped in with the Clippers and their series against the Jazz. I think the Clippers may have finally woken up and can wipe away the biggest fraud label that I was once giving them before, when I thought they were going to blow that series against the Dallas Mavericks. It looks like the Clippers is trying to wipe their slate clean of that biggest fraud in NBA history label that I was wanting to give them like super, super early because they lost last year when they wasn't supposed to. And then this year looked like they were going out in the first round. And then it looked like they was going out in the second round. And it looks like they might have bounced back and made something happen. White Falcon says Trae Young and Bogdanovich and Clay in the East. No, they're not. Trae Young and Bogdan are not Curry and Clay of the Eastern Conference. They're not. It's just, no disrespect to Trae Young, no disrespect to Bogdan, but Curry and Clay are the best the best three-point shooting backcourt in the history of the NBA, period. The best three-point shooting backcourt in the history, not just like in the modern NBA, but in the history of the NBA, period. So, no, they're not. Trae Young is not that yet. Bogdan will never. Trae Young is not that and probably will never be Steph Curry, and Bogdan will never be Klay Thompson. So, let's just get rid of that. Let's never say that again. Says Zubac has to play better. Yeah, he has to play better, but if your stars, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, can go out there and get you 62 combined points, you can do a lot. Zubac can have a couple of bad games. Paul George go out there and score 31 and play like playoff P and not pandemic P, and Kawhi Leonard can be Kawhi Leonard and not hold himself back. This team's going to be one to reckon with, man. It's going to be that Clippers team that we always thought, like when they came together. Everybody was like, dang, this Clippers team is legit. And then they lost in the second round of the bubble last year, and it kind of wiped away a lot of people's expectations. But this Clippers team is loaded with talent. They have guys that can really, really hoop, like really, really play good basketball at times. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I'm going to take a few more of these and then get up out of here. Golden State Warriors, Hawks are some I see the similarities, White Falcon 44, between early Golden State, and this Hawks teams. I see where you're going because the Hawks have a ton of guys that can put the ball in the basket. A ton of guys that they have athleticism, they have three-point shooters, they have youth, they have, you know what I mean? Like they have a ton of guys that can actually score and really score from the perimeter between Herter, Gallinari, Trae Young, Bogdan. DeAndre Hunter can make threes. Cam Reddish, when he's healthy, can make threes. Solomon Hill sometimes. I get what you're saying with that three-point shooting. You didn't Clint Capella, protects your rim, but to say the Golden State is just, it's just not it. It says Phoenix Western Conference champs. I see George folding under the pressure. That's been his stigma. That's been his thing, Boyd. Shout out to Boyd. Paul George hasn't come up clutch when needed the most. And that is why a lot of people don't believe the Clippers will win the championship. When you look at the Clippers on paper and look at their roster when they line up against anybody, you can take the Clippers roster against anybody. Like they can legit win the NBA title. The problem is you don't know which Paul George you're going to get. You don't know if you're going to get pandemic P or playoff P. That's the biggest question mark with the Clippers. If we knew we were getting playoff P, a guy that we saw last night that scored 31 and 8 last night, then the Clippers would probably be the favorites. Not only a lot of people be picking them to win the championship, they'd probably be the favorites to win the championship with Brooklyn being hurt. Even with Chris Paul and the Phoenix Suns playing the way they're playing. If we knew Paul George was going to be consistent, 25, 28, 30, 32 points a night, then the Clippers will be the favorite. But he's not guaranteed to do that. So that's the problem that the Clippers have, and a lot of people have with picking the Clippers. It says, as Middleton goes, so goes the Bucks. Well, the Bucks got a big break. Kyrie Irving got hurt. The Bucks got a huge break when Kyrie Irving landed on Giannis Antetokounmpo's foot. When Kyrie Irving's ankle touched the ground, the Bucks won the series. The Bucks series was handed to them. When Kyrie Irving's ankle literally touched the dang ground, the Bucks won the series. James Harden went out game 1 with a hamstring injury. Kyrie Irving's ankle touched the freaking ground. So the Bucks are probably going to take and win that series. Point blank, period. Clippers winning a ring. PG-13 coming to New York after. Respect the man. So I'm not hating on Paul George. I'm not disrespecting him. I don't know if he's going to New York. He just signed an extension. I think Paul George just signed like a 4-year, $100 million contract extension. So I don't think he's leaving New York anytime soon. If the Clippers lose this series, Kawhi Leonard is going to be the one with the wandering eye. If the Clippers lose before winning the championship, if the Clippers, they can leave and lose in the Western Conference Finals. If they don't win the title this year, trust and believe, Kawhi Leonard is going to be wandering. He's going to be looking over there at the Lakers. He could potentially be looking at the Knicks. He could potentially be looking at the 76ers. Like, Kawhi Leonard is going to have a wandering eye. So just don't take that out. Paul George ain't going nowhere, though. Paul George signed his long-term deal. He's staying a Clipper for a very, very long time. You're good, Jeff. Young Mike Wilbon, Stephen A. looked out and shut up. Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. Randall getting traded for PG-13. I don't know if that's going to happen. I wouldn't put that theory out there. Randall is going to get a big contract extension. That's what's going to happen. Randall just won most improved player. I think Randall's deal, I think he might have only like 1 year left on his deal. He just had his best career of a season. Him and his agent in the Knicks, Leon Rose, are talking about an extension right now because Julius Randle definitely is going to want it after winning most improved player, averaging a career high in points, rebounds, field goal percentage, and 3-point percentage, and he's having another baby. It's just a side note. So he's going to want a new deal. He's going to want a new deal to take care of his family. So that's all I got to say. Thank you guys for tuning in. Once again, I'm Jeff Lightsy Jr. with the Black Boss Channel in Victory Formation. Hit the thumbs up button on your way out. Like, share, subscribe, and follow us on Instagram at the VF Sports Show. We post content on there all the time, from reels to former interviews to all kinds of stuff, clips from the broadcast. Thank you guys for tuning in. Follow us over there on Instagram, and we will see you next time. Remember, we're here every morning, 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Central, right here on the Black Boss Channel and over on my personal YouTube, Jeff Lightsy Jr. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'll see you next time. Peace.